8, 7, 6. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brittany Manning. Welcome back to the Starboard Portal, and thanks for tuning in. Today, we have a great session lined up with the first of a 5-part Developing Team Symposium from the Intercollegiate Sailing Association. And we're going to have Dartmouth College Sailing Team head coach Justin Assad leading a panel of some awesome college sailors to talk about team culture and commitment, as well as some organizational tools. So with that, I'll kick it over to them to fire us off.
Thanks, Brittany, and thank you, US Sailing. We're really excited to have this opportunity to present on developing teams and present something that we hope will be a great resource for many of the teams that are out there in the ICSA. So our goal over the next few weeks with this is to try to present information that teams won't necessarily carry over from an institutional standpoint. And so we're looking at a bunch of different modules that impact all sorts of different aspects of running a college team. And that's everything from team culture and organization up through scheduling effectively, recruiting, the development of your team over the course of a season and a year, and how to run a daily practice, and a variety of other items. And as we go forward, we're thrilled for input from everyone who's watching at home, and any topics you'd like to see us cover or areas you'd like us to reflect on. We're thrilled to incorporate that. So today we're going to be talking about team culture and organization. And this is kind of the fundamental building block. The reason we're starting with this is because we think it's a fundamental piece of getting a team off the ground, whether it's a club team run by students, a club team run by a head coach, a part-time coach, a full-time coach, or even on a varsity team. This stuff is the nuts and bolts of what makes your team successful. And so we've got a great panel of coaches and students here to join us today. So we're going to have them introduce themselves, and we'll start with Grace.
Hi, everyone. I'm Grace Carrick. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I attended CalPoly from 2014 to 2018. During my time there, I was co-captain 1 year, captain for 2 years, and served as the Pacific Coast Conference undergrad representative my senior year. CalPoly is a fully student-run club team.
Great, thanks, Grace. Allison?
Hi, I'm Allison. I go to CalPoly now. I'm currently a senior, graduating this spring. During my time at CalPoly, I also served as co-captain and captain, and this year I'm our team president. And this past year, I was our PCCSC undergraduate representative.
Great, thanks, Allison. Maya.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maya, and I'm a senior at BU, so I'll be graduating in May. I was the captain of the sailing team this past year, and then I was the commodore last year. And I also served as the NISA undergraduate representative for social media. And we are a full-time head coach sailing team.
Great, thank you, Maya. Allison Chenard.
Hey guys, I'm the other Allison. I am a senior at the University of Georgia, graduating very soon. I do a lot of work for CASA and the ICSA, but the bulk of my time in college sailing has been working for UGA Sailing. We are historically a student-run team. In the past 2 years, we've been like a third kind of coached, but the bulk of how we've existed has been student-run.
Great, thanks, Allison. And then Olivia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Starek from the University of Wisconsin. I'm currently a senior graduating here in a few weeks, and I have served as co-captain for the past 2 years, as well as our recruiting chair. And we are a student-run, student-led club team with a part-time coach.
Great, thanks, Olivia. And then lastly, Isaac.
Hi, everyone. I'm Isaac. I'm the head coach of the University of Pennsylvania Sailing Team, and we have a club team that with a full-time head coach.
Great, thanks, Isaac. And then to introduce myself, like Brittany said earlier, I'm Justin Assad. I'm the head sailing coach at Dartmouth College now, where we're a varsity program with a full-time head coach. But my background, I coached at the University of Vermont, where I was a full-time head coach of a club team. And then I sailed in college at Columbia University, where we were a fully student-led team with a part-time head coach. So I've kind of seen, and we had no head coach my freshman year there. So I've kind of seen all the different aspects of what college sailing looks like. And I'm psyched about the panel we have today, because it really presents everything from a fully student-led team up through like two full-time head coach teams. And I think we all have a lot we can learn from this squad, and we're psyched to talk about it. So we're going to launch one quick note. If you're viewing on YouTube, take a minute to type in who you are, what team you're representing on the chat box. And all day long, we'll be taking questions, and Brittany will be sending those over to us so we can answer them on the panel. So definitely, we'd love to hear what questions people have, and look forward to answering those. So moving right in, we're going to talk about team culture. So when we talk about team culture, there's a couple aspects that we look at with this. First is, how do we make the team fun, and why are people excited to be part of it? And the question here is, what kind of team would you like to join? And how do your officers and spokespeople, your stakeholders, how do they carry themselves and represent the team? And that will attract a similar type of teammate and prospective member. And then, of course, social activities. And at every level in college sailing, that's part of what a team is made of. So dinners, training trips, trust building exercises, mountain weekends, hikes, ski weekends, etc. And as it says here, you'll sail better together if you genuinely enjoy each other's company. So invest in social experiences that grow this bond. So we want to talk a little bit about what commitment looks like on some of the teams that are here, and that's kind of ties into sailing and improvement, and also what the team culture piece looks like in terms of how we keep people excited about being on the team, and what we want the team to look like to outsiders. So let's go to Olivia in Wisconsin, and we're going to talk a little bit about the University of Wisconsin's commitment structure and how they've established that over time. So go ahead, Olivia.
So for the 4 years that I've been on the team, we've had practice 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, with 2 days a week being mandatory. So most members join our practices on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And are able to sail with a part-time coach that's on the water helping us out. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays, we're going to have student run practices where our 2 practice captains help organize drills. And then we have some very amazing alumni that help us drop marks and move marks for our race days. So our team is structured a little bit more loosely than some of the other like varsity teams or club teams with a full-time head coach, but you're going to see a lot of commitment from students on Tuesdays and Thursdays, with around 25 sailors on the water those days. We also have weekly meetings for our team on Thursdays, where we'll discuss any new policies that are in place, anything that the university has changed about our team, as well as have some chalk talks that are led by either our coach or our 2 practice captains.
Sorry about that. I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty here. Let me go back to that. Great, thank you for that, Olivia. So talk to us a little bit about when you came to Wisconsin. How did your the leaders of the team at that point establish these expectations with you?
So day one of joining the team with all the new freshmen coming in, it was set in stone very quickly that this was a competitive team. We're here to be the best that we can in both the MCSA and the ICSA, and having practice 4 days a week was really important to the captains at the time. And this has kind of waxed and waned as my time in Wisconsin has gone on, but now we're really structured into a 4-day system where Fridays are a little bit more of like a funner practice, where we'll do some like races and some like more fun like student chosen drills. But at the very beginning, it was made very clear at like our first meetings that this is what we do to succeed in our conference as well as the whole ICSA.
Great, super helpful. And so Allison and Grace from CalPoly, talk to us a little bit about how this matches up with what your commitment structure looks like at CalPoly.
Yeah, so CalPoly is a little bit different because we don't have like a coach or anything. It's just completely student run. So our practices happen when team members can lead practices. So what we do is we have our officer board. Those people are all like qualified to lead practices, and they basically prior to registration they tell everybody their practice schedule and how that's going to work, and people are able to tailor their schedules to like the days of the week that we'll have practice. So we shoot for everybody practicing 2 days a week, but it's been really hard to implement mandatory practices just because of the like how much everybody's schedule changes and like differs each quarter. But
Yeah, and
Great.
adding to that, we're big proponents of you get out what you put in. So we can't enforce mandatory practices, but obviously you're not going to become a better sailor if you're never going out on the water.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's certainly true. And then Allison Chenard, talk to us a little bit about Georgia. What does their commitment structure look like?
So as a team pretty similar to CalPoly's is the fact that we also can't really enforce mandatory practices. Our biggest hurdle for practices is the travel distance. So we have to drive an hour each way to practice. So getting off campus is very difficult for us. So we offer 2 practices a week regularly. We try to throw in one on the weekends if we can, but we stress getting to at least 1 practice a week, which puts us at a disadvantage going up against other teams that practice more. But you know, you do what you can if you want to sail in college, and that's just what we have. And yeah, that's kind of our structure right now.
Great. And Allison, tell me a little bit about what percentage of your team members do you think, do you have a healthy chunk that go to both practices? What does that look like?
Both practices, we're getting probably like honestly about 6 people out to both practices. But if you look at people getting out to practice at least once a week, we were in kind of the 30s range last fall. So it was a good number. Yeah.
Great. So let's go back to Olivia in Wisconsin. So Olivia, talk to me a little bit about, you say you guys have 2 days a week mandatory. What percentage of your team would you say goes to 2 days versus 3 days versus 4 days? And how do you think your individual team members determine that?
So we have about, I'd say 70% going to our 2 days, 2 days a week practice, as well as probably around like 60% going to 3 and about 60% going to 4 as well. So it's mostly determined by class schedules. A lot of the team has class open during our Tuesday, Thursday practices. But on our Wednesday and Fridays, a lot of people have labs during Wednesday practice in the afternoon. So it's really based around our schedule. And we kind of have people sign up using an app called TeamSnap, and they will choose which days they're available to practice, and then they're committed to going to those days. And if they change their availability after noon on the day of practice, then we have like different measures put in place. So if you don't come to a practice you say you're going to, then your next practice you're going to help out dropping marks. So we just have a way to keep each sailor accountable.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I know after playing with a lot of different ideas over time, it seems like sailing is the most valuable thing. So when you fall short on accountability, missing a practice or helping to run a practice really helps people kind of reinforce how lucky we are to have that opportunity to be on the water all the time.
Exactly.
So, great. As we start to move forward, do we have any questions for, and I think this is really cool to see because it kind of presents for us some of the, on these student-led teams, how do we get that balance between our most committed sailors and the people who love to sail but are trying to balance that with other commitments, et cetera. Do you have any questions for these 3 programs? Allison and Grace, any things you would add about kind of like percentages on your teams? How many people practice, 2 versus 3 versus 4 days a week? I guess you guys are probably 3 most of the time because of the travel and PCCSC, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of said earlier, like it totally depends on the quarter. Like everyone's schedule is different every quarter. In winter quarter, the sun sets obviously a lot earlier, so practices happen at different times. But we probably get like, I want to say like 6 boats out on the water twice a week, and then on Fridays and weekends we get like maybe 10. I think is where we are right now, which has grown a lot since when Grace was on the team.
Yeah, that's great. And so what do you think helped to build that growth?
I think in the past year, probably we've implemented a lot more like structure in terms of planning practices. So it used to be kind of just like sporadic, like whenever someone was like could run a practice, they'd be like, "Oh, tomorrow we're gonna have a practice." But we've developed like what I said earlier, kind of like the registration schedule, and now we have like start like on Sunday night we'll be like, okay, today or this week we'll have practice Tuesday, Thursday, and the next week we'll have practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to try to like adjust for different people's schedules because not everybody can practice Tuesday, Thursday. So I think just like planning ahead and making sure to communicate a lot with the team about when there are going to be opportunities to get out on the water, so people can plan their schedules.
Great. So almost like a function of communication and then making adjustments as you hear about conflicts to make it more accessible for the team.
Yeah, and then one thing I'd like to add to that is I know when I was on the team, we would talk a lot to whoever our skipper, whoever our crew was, and made sure that we had similar school schedules so that we could practice together.
Great. Yeah. And that's kind of that coordination, and then being able to, now Grace, let me ask you, when you talk about that, is there something that helped people make that greater commitment to say we're going to make sure that our schedules line up, or was that just like a function of naturally wanting to be more competitive?
I think people on our team were pretty close and we wanted to spend that time together out in the water and get better. So I think it was more of a function of that.
Great. Cool. Well, that's all super valuable stuff. Let's go ahead and click over to Isaac here. And so Isaac, talk to us a little bit. Now, just to remind everybody, Isaac's program is the University of Pennsylvania. And Isaac's a full-time head coach working with the club team. So Isaac, take us through a little bit of what the commitment structure looks like there.
Yeah, so it's pretty similar with WISCO, and I'd love to also compare with Maya as we go through this, but we offer 4 days a week of practice, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Friday we have a 1 to 5 practice, and the other days are 3 to 7. The kind of the standard expectation for everybody on the team is you're doing 3 days. Typically those days are Tuesday and Thursday, and either Monday or Friday, kind of onto the Tuesday, Thursday core. And then if you have a legitimate academic conflict, like a class for your major, lab, studio, clinical, whatever, 2 days is totally fine. And then we have another percentage of our team that does all 4 days. And that's, typically if they can balance that. We also have captain's practices. These are essentially practices that our captains create, and we have maybe 1 or 2 a season, and it's just kind of like fun, wholesome activities. Like you see, we did some rock climbing this year. I think they've done lots of stuff in the past. And then we also have crew meetings, which are led by our crew matriarchs, which are essentially the most experienced crews on the team, where they do film review with all the crews, and they kind of get together on their own, and that's really important as well. So then going forward for like regattas, so in terms of the commitment, is basically we look at our commitment and say, okay, there's 8 weekends of sailing or 9 weekends of sailing in the season. Which weekends can you not sail? And so I ask the whole team as early as I can, what 1 or 2 weekends do you need off based on your midterm alignments and all of that kind of stuff. And then most of the time, those times they request off work out, and it works for what we're trying to accomplish as a team. So that's been really helpful for people to in long range planning and to achieve some balance there.
Great.
for our workout structure, we have 2 team workouts a week, and then we have 3 lifts a week and smaller workout groups that meet kind of when it works for their schedule. We kind of do meetings as needed. In the spring, we do a lot more meetings. In off season, we do a lot more meetings. In the fall, we do a lot less meetings. Now in COVID times, we're meeting 3 times a week. But I would say the bigger part of our commitment structure is we have what's called an academic skip policy. So basically, each sailor has 3 academic skips per season. They can use that skip for workout or practice or meeting, whatever they need to. And it's kind of like, I'm overloaded, I didn't get any sleep, I need to use this skip to be a functioning human being and being able to bring my all tomorrow to practice or to the regatta on the weekend, you know. And so that's been really successful in kind of how we keep track. And then for sickness, which is always an important thing, if you request off for sickness, the important thing is, okay, that's you taking the whole day off. It's not like, okay, I'm not getting up for workouts and now I'm coming to practice. It's like, no, if you're missing workouts, you're missing practice. Like, you need to get better if that's the case. And we also, you know, I really encourage and ask people to, if you are sick, you need to see student health services or your health provider, because it's really hard to get better in college. I'm sure, as all of you know, it's a very stressful time. There's so much going on. And so it's important to, you know, make sure you're doing something about it.
Great, Isaac. This is really well organized. We'd like to, I'm sure, hopefully at some point we'll have crew patriarchs and matriarchs in there, hopefully at some point, but good stuff all around. And then how about Maya? How does this compare to what BU looks like?
Yeah, this all looks very structured. I think our practice schedules are very similar. We do 4 days a week. Mondays are off. That's because of BU policy that we need 1 day for school. And then, so if we have 4 days on the water, and then we go away on the weekends, every weekend almost, at least when there are regattas. And then in the off season, we spend 2 of those days. So probably normally Tuesday, Thursdays for workouts. And those workouts in the fall or in the spring just now have been captain led because we were in the transition between getting a new head coach. But we don't actually have anything that's like how many days you can skip for school or anything, which I actually like that idea with 3 academic skips, because we have had that problem quite a bit with people on the team who need to take time off for school or just have had a super stressful weekend, or it's very overwhelming, and not having that thing hanging over your head that's saying like, okay, you have 2 more after this. It makes it maybe easier to do it, but at the same time, I think it's kind of been working for us the way we have been doing it. We're just trusting the athletes, because so many people on our team are super motivated and dedicated. And we kind of are so competitive, so we know that if you skip for school a certain amount of times, then you might not be able to come back to the spot you were on. But yeah, I do really like that, what Isaac was saying about academic skips, but although we don't have that, but we definitely have had that problem in the past. And then, yeah, we have full head coach and an assistant coach, so we don't really have much student-led things on the water other than things that happen off the water. So yeah.
Great, super helpful. So Maya and Isaac, I think you touched on, well, Maya, you in particular touched on a careful balance with accountability and trust. And I think every team on the call and everybody who's listening along at home probably has to walk that fine line between when do you trust somebody versus when do you feel like you need to ask the extra question to hold them accountable. Isaac and Maya, have you guys run into that situation before in leading your teams, and how have you been able to navigate it?
So I mean, yes, I think anything that manages people will run into this. And I would say that mostly a lot of individual conversations are necessary to keep everybody kind of focused in the right direction. And I'd say, you know, feedback is also really, really important. So like, hey, you know, for me as a coach to be able to say, hey, like, I feel like you're missing way too much. What's going on? Is everything okay? That kind of thing is really, really important, just to touch base and build a relationship that says like, okay, you know, we need you, but we also need you at your best. And what can we do to make sure you're at your best? Because if you're not at your best, like Maya said, opportunities are going to start to disappear on you. And so honestly, there's a lot less now, but certainly as the team at Penn was making the transition from, no coach, part-time coach, club team to full-time coach, club team, there was a lot of like, hey, where were you? Hey, this is important, kind of stuff like that. And there's a lot less of that now. And like all of these policies that you see here in the commitment structure is, they're there because it was something that was going wrong in the past, that trial and error essentially. So, yeah.
I agree with
Yeah,
that.
Go ahead, Maya. Yeah.
Build off that a little bit. I think it's definitely probably easier for us teams with head coaches to actually hold people accountable, because putting rules as a head coach makes, I guess, students more inclined to actually do it because they know that it will have consequences if they disobey. So I think for at least an examples on our team is like history repeats itself. If you're one of those people who always, when you're a little bit stressed out, always asks for a day off or weekends off, then it's going to be kind of speaking to your character, and it's going to be harder to kind of bounce back from that if that keeps happening. But if you're like one of those people who always show up to everything, then it's kind of different way of approaching it, and you kind of trust that person more to like be honest about the difficulty that they're facing right now, and to actually give them what they want.
Yeah, it's good to hear you guys say that, because I think one thing that I've found and that I wish I had known earlier in my coaching career is that when the team wants the coach to implement rules is when they're the most powerful, I think. And so on our team at Dartmouth, we have a similar academic skip policy, and it was actually the team captains who came to me and said, we need a policy on this because we have some people missing practice for a week or two on end, and other of us never missing and killing ourselves to make sure we can't miss. And so I think for people out there, the best scenario is when your team leaders, in conjunction with the rest of the team, have a conversation about what they want those rules to be. And then everybody has the buy-in on the standard to be able to then say, okay, we agree to meet this to be part of the team together. And that also makes it easier for teammates to hold each other accountable, I think. But what Isaac said is totally true as well. The communication and establishing the relationships is where you get the trust that allows you to then hold each other accountable. And without that, you can't really just step up and just start holding people accountable if you haven't built the trust first. I think that's a crucial thing. So cool. What Isaac, I'm going to kick you a question in 1 second, but I want to ask you one more thing, which is to reflect a little bit on your transition. You kind of just referenced that transition from Penn for a long time was a very strong student-led program with that performed at a relatively high level, but had inconsistent part-time coaching. And I know the program and the leadership there made the decision to move to more consistent full-time coaching. Talk to me a little bit about, and I know part of that was a culture change that you had to institute. So talk to me a little bit about what that was like, and tell everyone at home like how that progressed over time. And how long have you been at Penn? Kind of give us some background on that.
Yeah, so I started at Penn at the spring of 2018. So like that February, right before season started. And I mean, honestly, I think the transition from at Penn was it was pretty easy because the athletes really wanted it. Like it came from the inside. Really, that want for more structure, better training, more regatta opportunities. That really came from inside. So the team was fully bought into having a full coach. So full-time head coach, which was very important. But a lot of these policies that you see on the slide were all developed because of part of the transition. Like the academic skip policy happened because we had done 2 weeks of practice, and I was navigating like 10 text messages a day of people being like, this is bad and that's I can't go for this reason. And I was just like, oh, we can't do this. Like, this is crazy. And so, the same thing for, the sick policy is you have people coming to workouts because they can't use an academic skip and they're really sick. And you're like, this is not good for you. It's also not good for the rest of us. So it's, it's important. Those kind of things kind of spawned out of the transition. And I think the transition, it's a lot longer than you think it's going to be. You know, you're like, so what we tried to do is kind of institute one kind of major expectation per season. So we really phased in probably over 3 seasons the majority of this commitment structure, and kind of gave everybody like a 3-month window on what was going to happen, so they kind of were more comfortable when it did happen. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you know, constant reevaluation with the team leadership is a big thing too. I know I'm just thinking again about the sick policy, like on our team. So we instituted, like, you either have to see the, and I went around and did a poll of all the other varsity coaches. I talked to a softball coach, soccer coach, football coach, etc., and asked them how they handled sick days. And most of them were like, well, you have to go see the trainer, or you have to go to our student health services. It's one or the other. And so we did that for a while. And then eventually I realized, like, we had kids like dragging themselves out of bed to go see the trainer to get excused from the lift that day, or the workout. And so we actually said, hey, we trust the team. We'll give them 1 day. If they have to miss a consecutive commitment, we expect them to be getting seen by student health services or the trainer. And that kind of helped it. You know, everybody knows that we trust them, but they know there's accountability involved as well. So I think for everybody out there, you can kind of think about how that applies to your team and how you might take that and use it for your structure. So we've got a few good questions here, and let's go to one question from Chris Herbster, and I missed what team Chris was from, so apologies, Chris. It's too high up in the chat box now for me to get back to it, but Chris asks,
is from Rollins.
From Rollins, okay, great.
Rollins down in Florida, yeah.
Yep, for sure. Ben Chafee's new team, which we were all psyched to see Ben down there with a wonderful Instagram presence these days during COVID-19, keeping it light for everybody. But Chris, your question is, how do you build numbers from new sailors with these strong commitments for participation? We would just scare everyone away. And Allison Keenan asked the same question. And I know Olivia volunteered to respond. So let's start with Olivia.
So I think that on Wisconsin, it's really important for us to, as we increase the level of competitiveness, we also increase the amount of fun that we're having off the water. So I know, like, first week of the team, like for after the first day of practice, we have a freshman barbecue. Like, everyone comes out, meets the entire team. On Wednesday of the first week, we have a movie night. Thursday, we'll do like another social event, like a game night. And it's super important for us that everyone feels comfortable on the team and is friendly with each other and knows that this is just like another big family. And I think that that's been a way that we really retain high numbers. And on a team as big as Wisconsin, we also are really pushing to increase our level of competitiveness with such a deep team. But as we do that, making sure that people are still having fun and enjoying their time.
Great, thanks, Olivia. Any other contributions on that, Isaac and Maya, maybe?
I would say that honestly, the best way we try to keep numbers, and we have a very small team, so this is like a very relevant topic for us. We only have 20 people on our team, so the best way we try to keep numbers is to have a strong community and a strong team culture that's led by you know, the captains, and the other way we try to keep people is we try to make sure that this commitment structure is part of your routine, not an exception to your routine. So we actually really found that, like, practicing once a week was actually worse for somebody's commitment than it was practicing no times that week at all, because it felt like an exception to their routine. Like, it felt like one extra thing they had to do instead of being a thing that they know they need to do. And that's a part of kind of, so I think routine is a really big part of undergraduate life, because it is so chaotic. Every single day looks super different based on academic schedule, group meetings, you know, everything. So having sailing kind of be the most stable thing time-wise is really important, I think, and many people look for that kind of structure, want that kind of structure coming from high school, right? A very structured time in your life. So yeah.
Great, good stuff. Maya, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I like what Isaac was saying. I think it's very similar on the BU team. We have focusing on our leadership and our social aspects of our team, which definitely is the reason why a lot of people stay, because we are a club team, we're not varsity, so we take walk-ons, and we have taken people who don't really know how to sail. And the reason why they stay is because they obviously love sailing, but they also really like being with each other and being friends with each other and having a community on campus that of all like great people. And those people don't necessarily try and win regattas, or they just come to practice diligently every day, and they show up for the team aspect of it.
Great. Yeah, that's I think that's a key thing. And then, it sounds like, having the commitment is something they look forward to doing. And when they start to see the improvement on the water, I think that also like reinforces why it's valuable to be committed at that level. So I think that's a key thing. All right, so we had a few questions before that I missed in the chat box. We're going to kick it back to those. From Peggy Menzies, in the northern climates, how do you balance the weather for practice? So I think Olivia is probably the best equipped, other than me, to answer that question. And then I think we'll also, after that, we'll ping around and ask from Jack, Raycheck, how long are your practices? So Olivia, why don't you talk about how you balance the northern climate?
So because we have ice on the lake from usually around December through March, our winter season as well as our spring break is super, super important. So we have winter workouts twice a week as a full team, with the expectation that you're going to be exercising on your own time 4 to 5 times a week, as well as we have weekly chalk talks during the winter focused on team racing, as a lot of people on our team come in without any team race knowledge. So that's been really important for us to get everyone on to the same page. And our spring break time is really the most amount of time that we get in the spring to sail. So we usually head down to Eckerd and we'll practice for 5 days a week with 2-a-day practices, usually anywhere from like sailing from 7 to like 5 p.m. at night. And that's a really, really important time for us to be able to get out on the water before the ice is gone.
Cool. So forgive me if I missed it in there. When you're running those practices at home in the fall, about how long do those practices run?
They're about 3 hours to 3.5 hours.
3 hours to 3.5. Got it. And that's on the water time or show up to walk out?
Show up to walk out.
Show up to walk out. Got it. And then what portion of that is on the water?
Probably about 250-ish.
Got it. Great. Grace and Allison, how about you guys? How long's a CalPoly practice?
Depends on the time of year. Obviously, we can practice all the way through the winter, but the sun sets earlier. So I think we try to start practices around 1 and go until 4 or 5, I think is usually what we do. We have a weird situation though, where our boats take a really long time to launch and rig, because we have to launch them all by crane. So we have to factor in like a good 45 minutes just for rigging and de-rigging, which is really unfortunate. So that's why I think our practices are a little bit, we allow more time for our practices.
We also sometimes with our practices, at least when I was on the team, we would have 2 different waves of people who could maybe not be there early because they had class, or could not stay late because they had class. So we would have the first group rig, put the boats in the water, leave them in the water, and then the second group would come in and then they would de-rig.
Smart. Yeah. So that's kind of an efficiency hack that gets you guys sailing a little more and less time with the logistics for sure. How about Allison Chenard?
Since we are so far away from our practice facilities, we try to maximize time out there as much as we can. So we will aim for like 2.5 to 3 hours actually like on the water. Because we're only getting sometimes 1 day a week at most practicing for some people. And then for scheduling classes around that, we try to have people block out sort of like 6 hours 1 day a week that they can shift their schedule around as the times change. So our practice start and end time will fluctuate with when the sun sets. But we just try to plan that, communicate that as far in advance as we can, and allow things to sort of move around a little bit.
Great. And then maybe Maya and then Isaac. So Maya, how about those BU sessions on the river?
I see I'm muted. Okay.
Yep.
We kind of take it a little bit by day. We don't really have a specific time to get off the water, but we always go on the water at 2:30. So we like meet at 2, and then we have a meeting, and then we're ready to go on the water at 2:30. And then in the fall, the sun doesn't set for very long, so we can be out there until 6:30. And it depends kind of on what day we have. On Fridays, we probably cut it a little shorter if we're sailing on the weekend or if it's windy days. I think on the Charles, if it's super windy, it's kind of hard to have a super long session because you get so tired out from hiking in the puffs and almost capsizing the windward and leeward, and you're kind of all over the place. So yeah, it's we don't really have anything set, but it's normally from 2:30, and we definitely go for at least 2 hours. Yeah.
Great. And then Isaac, how about you guys?
So for us, we're about 20 minutes away from our venue on the beautiful Delaware River. And so from van to van, it's 3 to 7 on for 3 days a week. And then on Fridays, we do it from 1 to 5 and then leave for regattas at 5.
Got it. So yeah, and plan to travel for the weekend. Roger that. Great. So it sounds like, I mean, most teams in general, we're hearing between 2 and 3 hours. We would remind everybody that the ICSA has a limit on countable athletically related activities for the day, which is 4 hours. So, you know, if you have a team, a required workout that's an hour long, you should only be using 3 more hours of the student's time and that begins once you start your briefing or once you start the first drill on the water, depending on what the setup is. So it's always good to remind everyone of that. We got another couple more good questions here, and then we're going to move on to organization. Honestly, we've got so much good stuff coming here that I think we'll run with this for a little bit and then move on to team organization, maybe another 5 minutes. So Kirsten Delaney has a great question. What do you do if you have a member who negatively impacts the team culture? How do you decide, communicate, and enforce rules? And I think this kind of runs into Nikki's question, which is, as the captain leader of a student-run team, how do you balance being strict, upholding policies, maintaining team structure, and being a peer / one of the team? So I think let's tackle that first one there with somebody who's really negative, and then and then we'll move on to our next session and talk a little bit about organizational structure. So anybody want to take that one? We've all had problem teammates. I know I've had them both when I was sailing and when I've been coaching. So how have people handled that?
I can tackle that one if no one else wants to. So I think that for the most part, if we have a issue on our team with a specific member, usually as one of the captains myself and the other captain will usually talk to that person first and kind of get a better idea on what's going on, like why they don't feel like they're fitting into the team, anything that we can change as captains or as a structural problem of maybe why there are some issues that are being caused. And then we gently remind of our policies and the things that really help our team run successfully and efficiently. And I think that if more problems arise off the water, especially, they tend to weed themselves out, especially if that member is causing problems like socially with other members. Our team is super close, so I think that for the most part, that person either falls in line with our team and becomes closer friends, or decides that the sailing team is probably not the best place for them.
Yeah, that's great. That's really poignant, Olivia. And I know, Maya, you were going to talk, and then I saw Allison's hand too. So let's go Maya, then Allison.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch upon that. I think as a captain, if or when there are negative vibes by anyone on the team, I think it's been really important to kind of talk to that person individually and try and figure out the background for all of it, because normally it's just could be someone that's very overwhelmed and then like take it out on other people, and just transmitting that information to the coach so that it doesn't appear as that person just being super negative, I think has been paying off. And I don't think that we necessarily have that much conflict with people that can't be resolved. And I think just talking to them about what the negativity could be caused by, I think it's not normally not sailing related, so it can always be solved by just talking about it.
And then at BU, have you seen scenarios where you've given people opportunities to change and they haven't been able to? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, I've definitely been kind of pretty hard worker, especially with people who are like kind of overwhelmed and want to quit the team. And I have kind of been like supporting them and trying a lot to vouch for them in front of the coaches so that they won't be shut down immediately, so that they will have some time to actually understand if that's what they really want. Because I've been very good friends with many of those people in those circumstances, and I feel like I've known better than that. So I've been trying pretty hard to actually just mediate with the coaches so that we can find a middle way and not just have nobody like understand what the situation is.
Cool, great, really good stuff. Great, so I think, you know, this is a pretty healthy discussion on just general team commitments, team culture, and how to get there. One thing I always like to say is, if you're not sure who your problem teammate is, make sure it's not you. That's really important. And with that, we're going to move on to our section on how teams are organized. And we have some really great presentation on this. And so, like we've referenced a few times, we have full-time salary paid coach of a club team, kind of a 50-50 hybrid where we have a part-time coach, but who's on the water, but students are really running the team. And then we have some fully student-run teams who don't really have a graduate or an authority figure outside of the peers who are involved. So we'll hear a little bit about how these teams are organized, and I think leading us off here is going to be Isaac. So Isaac, go ahead.
Thanks. So this is essentially what you see is our team organizing document, which is a big Google Docs or Google spreadsheet, and has a bunch of different tabs on the bottom that basically tell you what you need to know. So it's available to everybody on the team. It's editable by everybody on the team, and it's really a living document. And the important thing about this is basically it's always there, so everybody knows where they're expected to be, when they're supposed to be there. And I really believe in information transparency really helps you as an athlete understand, like, what is your purpose? What am I doing? What are things organized? I think athletes feel a lot more supported and a lot more confident when they know there's a lot of organization and purpose behind what they're doing at any given moment. Like a lot of times, it's really funny, but a lot of times when I think college sailors get in the van on Friday, they don't know necessarily where they're going or to what regatta they're going to. And I think it actually is very helpful to know where you're going and what regatta you're going to as an athlete. So I think this kind of can help out with that. So yeah.
Great. We go next slide.
Yeah. So this is essentially like the next tab on the spreadsheet, which is our practice tab. It shows you who's going what day per week and who's not going to be there. It shows you your pairings, kind of the theme of the week, and reminds you of the commitment. I think something that we mentioned earlier about commitment is talking about how practices are set up. And the way we like to set up our practices at Penn are, we say for the entire season, okay, you're a Monday, Tuesday, Friday person. Those are the 3 days you're coming. If you can't come one of those days, then, you know, we need to talk, use an academic skip, or you're sick. And then, as you can see, I'll mark you in red here. And this, like I say in the text, it, you know, takes a lot of surprise out of the equation, which is, I think, really important. So we don't waste 5 minutes at every single practice figuring out who's there, and, you know, and that just lowers morale, I think. So yeah.
Great.
Here you can see, this is just the roster. I mean, this is pretty easy. It just keeps, you know, everybody can see this, everybody can add. They can add all the information they need to it. And, you know, it's kind of where you have all of your information. And so if somebody needs to get in contact with somebody else, their number is on here. If they don't already have it, their email, you know, for a lot of stuff. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Isaac.
No problem. This is a very important thing that we do, and I think every team should do it, is a completely transparent view of everybody's class schedule. That way you know where somebody is at any given time, or at least, you know, whether their excuse is legitimate. And I think it also, by having to put your schedule here, you plan a lot better for the semester going forward, and you plan your time a lot better. It also makes it really easy for prospective students who are visiting, and recruits, so you can kind of schedule who can go to class with who, where, and when. And so that makes it a lot easier. So yeah, you can go next.
Now, Isaac, let me ask you a question about this slide. Do the students volunteer it? How do you get this information?
The students volunteer it. This is something that I think previously, I think I was kind of, this came out of like our recruitment chair. It was her idea. She was like, I just need to know everybody's schedule. And so we're like, okay, let's put them on a spreadsheet. And so this is something that the captains really focus on in the beginning of each season, is getting these schedules out of people and putting them here. And it's usually kind of like a 2-week-long project, because ad drop, it depends how long your ad drop lasts and everything like that. And so, yeah.
Right, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, this was a big thing for us when we started doing this. I was working with an academic advisor to get it, so I was curious how it goes on your team, but it's definitely super, super valuable. All right.
This is just what the spreadsheet you see on the bottom there, the 5 of 5, is the academic skip accountability, and that's also on the spreadsheet. And you could see that, you just keep track of how many people skip they have there on the team, and so that kind of works out. And then the top spreadsheet you see here is just kind of like what a sample for a training trip would look like. So this was our spring training at ODU this spring, and this is kind of the whole team was in one house in an Airbnb, and so this is kind of how we managed who was doing what and when we were practicing. So yeah.
Great stuff. And so you referenced, it looks like you guys live in a house there. Is that right? On that training trip?
Yes, that's right.
And how integral is that to developing the team culture?
I think honestly, I really, we are a club team, so we don't have any hotel restrictions or anything. So we spend a lot of time in Airbnbs, especially when we go to Cornell, and certainly to Dartmouth, to the Captain Hurst Bowl. We've been in Airbnbs, and I think it is very essential. I mean, communal living, and figuring out, who cooks for who, when, who cleans up, is just an important part of, I don't know, building a community and learning to lean on each other. Something that's really important that we talk about on our team is really like of all the team culture, of all the team experience you get in college, probably only 25% of that is actually sailing on the water. And the other 75% is everything else, every other interaction you have. So
totally. Yeah, that's great. I know on our team, we stay in a house on both of our big training trips, and like people cooking dinner together is one of the crucial things. And before like so much streaming was a thing, like navigating what we're going to watch on TV all together in one big room was actually like a great part of the team building exercise for sure. Great. So this is a great example. Isaac's organization, obviously, a lot of initial buy-in from the students. We like Joe's rainbow colors here down on the attendance sheet. So we're going to go now to Allison Chenard, who also has a super organized student-led peer-to-peer organization. So Allison, let's go ahead and talk about that some. Oh, actually, hey, we got a few more things for Isaac here. Sorry.
No
Let's go through these last couple slides. Go ahead, Isaac. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'll be quick. This is essentially just some other really helpful tabs that we have. I get a lot of, there's certainly some people on my team who says we have way too many tabs. So, that's also part of it. You can go next. And then team communication. I don't know if you want to talk about this here, but so basically what we use, I know every team kind of works a little differently, but for kind of long range, more formal planning type communication, we use email. And then for more short range, more informal, we use the Remind app, because it can push text messages to everybody, which I think is really, really nice, because I'm sure all of you know who have GroupMe, everybody turns off their notifications for GroupMe because it's just crazy. And so I want to make sure that there's something where they can't turn off the notifications for. So if there's a change, they're seeing it. So there can be no like, oh, I didn't know. So that excuse can never happen. And I think you probably see from the spreadsheet, like that is the excuse I'm trying to eliminate with all of the planning. Everybody should know everything at every given moment.
And have the the ownership of that, like needing to know rather than being able to say, oh, the information wasn't ready in time, right? That's what you're getting at there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So thanks, Isaac. Obviously super valuable. Great shot of the Quakers here at the 2019 Nationals. And let's go to Allison and the University of Georgia.
All right. I might actually skip over this slide.
Sure.
Because I don't think, yeah, we'll just skip over that one.
Okay.
So I wanted to take it back to Nikki Alden's question a little while ago, because I'm going to have her question in the back of my head here. So you don't have to scroll up, guys. Nikki said, as captain and leader of a student-run team, how do you balance being strict and upholding policies and maintaining structure and being a peer while also one of the team? So something that we have found to be really successful is a point system. So that kind of takes the subjectivity out of it and makes it a very objective process for us. So varsity teams have a greater power to require attendance. They can impose penalties for absences and whatnot. But for student-run, peer-led teams, we have less power in the traditional sense, and we're much more reliant on the self-motivation of our teammates. So instead of using requirements and penalties, we've rephrased it and framed it into what we're asking of our teammates. So we want to inspire them to show up because they want to, not because anyone is making them. So we've offered a point system that gives them a tangible view of their progress and shows them numerically how much they've been involved in working toward their goals. So the benefits we saw with this was that it took the pressure off of a peer coach and organizer when rosters had to be set, because you can refer back to these numbers and there's less room for accusations that you might be subjective in playing favorites. So those who are most involved are likely going to be your best sailors because they'll be on the water the most. And it usually lines up pretty well numerically with where their skill levels are. Additionally, it's a self-motivator for your teammates because they joined a competitive team, so they're probably competitive people. So when they can see kind of their points, it's like a little mini competition each week. And the people with the most points are always kind of texting each other saying like, you missing practice this week? You better not, because I'm gonna beat you in points. So that's a system that we've found that really works for us. And we don't have anyone butting heads anymore and no accusations, and it's just all been very smooth.
Totally, yeah, and it's really, I like it because it's so objective, so it's really straightforward. Yes. Now let me ask you a tough question. This takes somebody who's super organized to be able to run and be consistent with. How do you see this transferring after you've graduated from Georgia?
Oh, actually, okay, we'll go back to go one slide back, Justin, if you want.
All right, let me do that. Yep, sorry, right there.
All good. So we have kind of 3 people running our race team. We have 2 captains and then 1 like vice commodore that does all of the secretarial duties. And so she's the one keeping track of everyone who's coming to practice. She records workouts and chalk talks. So something also unique about our team is, as I've mentioned, we are very far away from our lake and we want to spend every minute that we can on the water. So we have a YouTube channel where we have chalk talks, also so that I don't have to teach points of sail for 100 times over 4 years. So we assign chalk talk viewing from YouTube videos, and then you take a corresponding quiz that we draw up on Google, and we can directly see everyone's comprehension of the whiteboard concepts. So between workouts and practices and chalk talks, you have a very numerical system of where they kind of fall in the lineup.
Great, super helpful.
And
then
the YouTube channel is public to anyone. It's an open resource.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Allison. Maybe we can get that over to Brittany to get that in the chat box in case anybody wants to check that out. So that'd be great. And then let's click over to talk about our Slack organization.
Yes, this is the bread and butter of, of University of Georgia Sailing. So Slack is GroupMe on steroids. We switched to it about 4 years ago when it was brand new. And we figured out a way that works for us, so we want to share it with you. So right off the bat, we had some people pushback saying, why do I don't want to learn another platform. Why can't we just use Facebook or GroupMe? And so they said, why should I learn another one? So Justin, we'll go to the next slide.
Yep.
This is pulled from Slack's website, but these are just a handful of companies that use Slack. And as you can see, it's covering a large variety of companies and organizations. So this platform is very prevalent after you leave college, and it might be worth your while to learn it. So it's not one of those platforms that you're only going to use in college. You'll probably see it again. It's very useful. We'll go to the next slide. Said all my benefits. The disadvantage of Slack is that since it's so able to be tailored to what you need, you have to figure out how you want to use it. So if we go to the next slide, this is how we have ours.
Hang on. There we go.
No. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, we got it right here. Yep.
Yeah, so in the style of GroupMe, it's sort of chats that are running, but you can organize them by topics. So for our channels, the topics are channels, and you can talk within those channels for specific topics. But we have general announcements, race team, club team. We alert people of when new Chalk Talks are posted. And then we have fun ones like Yum Yum channel, where if you want some friends to come sit with you in the dining hall, you just say, hey, I'm here, let's eat. And then we have a straw shaming channel, which is all for fun because we try to be environmentally friendly. So if you catch a teammate using a disposable straw, you put them in that channel. It's just, we have like 20 things that keep it fun. And then for private channels, that's where our officers chat. And then everything on logistics for regattas and planning, there's a whole lot of paperwork that has to be done for each time we leave campus for an event. Direct messages, because we always need those. And then there's little emoji reactions that you can add on there, and those keep it fun. But it's very malleable to what you need.
Great. So I guess that is most of the presentation on Slack. I know I'm pretty new to Slack, but we've been using it a bunch with our ICSA committees and organization of this actual presentation, and super functional. And I can totally see how it would be a really effective tool for, especially for a student-led team, but really for any team. So great stuff there. And Timothy Burns says, my team transitioned from GroupMe and Facebook to Slack. Agree with Allison here, super helpful and very team friendly. So thanks, Timothy, for the feedback on that. So I want to go now to a few questions we have, and I think this kind of gets us to maybe the end of our slide deck. And so I'd rather go to the gallery screen so everybody can see everyone. So panelists, that's your warning. We're going to the view where everyone can see you now. So here we go. So going a little bit through some of the questions that we got over the time here, and this was a really good one, was about leadership on the team. Most of our club teams function with an exec board. I don't want to take the time to go through the whole exec board, but I think a good question is captain, commodore, president. Those are three terms we hear a lot when we're looking at team structure. Maybe we can go team by team and talk about which of those you have and how their functions differ. And let's just go around the room with that. So maybe we'll start with Grace.
Yeah, sure. So when I was a junior on the team and became captain, I kind of decided I wanted more help with that position, specifically with just communicating with the school and overseeing other officer roles, which before we had a president role, that was all on the captain to do. So we kind of made a president role to take over some of those responsibilities, which freed up the captain to be able to focus on more of the regatta and like sailing heavy stuff.
Got it. Very smart. And then how many people are on the exec board total?
I think we have 11 officer positions.
Roger that. Great. How about Olivia?
So we have 2 co-captains with the same level of like power in our executive board, and both these positions usually, like traditionally, one captain does more of the communication and like direct contact with the team and school, and the other person does like a lot of behind the scenes work of like travel, trip plans, financials, Our executive board has 9 positions on it, and there's 12 people on the board with some executive positions holding 2 people. So our practice captains are super important to running our team, and they help do chalk talks, practice drills, any team run practices and captains practices. They help us coordinate as well.
Roger that. Great. Thank you. How about Allison Chenard? I think we still got you muted.
Oh, these are on executive officers, correct?
Yes, a number of executive officers, and then the leadership, like the top of the food chain there, whether it's a president, a commodore, a captain. Yeah. What are those, and what do they look like?
Gotcha. Yeah, we had a similar situation to CalPoly where we kind of needed to split up internal and external relations. So we have a president for external relations dealing with setting us up with the school and ICSA and CESA, making sure all of those fronts are good. And then our Commodore does internal relations. And then below that, we have our treasurer and then our race team captains and people who make the wheels go round. And yeah, it's kind of how we're set up. And then we got a bunch of chairs for merchandise and social and all that stuff.
Roger that. Yeah, great. And then how about you, Maya?
Yeah, we have 2 captains. So we have a female and a male captain, and they basically just work together doing the same roles. It's just a more effective way for us to get work done, we feel like. And then after that, we have the Commodore, who just does newsletters and reaches out to alumni and orders gear orders and stuff like that. And then we have a treasurer, secretary, and 2 social media positions.
And that's it. So that's kind of a smaller executive board than my experience, for sure.
Yeah, it's not that big.
Great. And then how about you, Isaac?
So we used to have 3 captains, but we've gone down to 2 captains, and it's our first year with 2 captains, and we like that. And we have an exec board. We have 2 social media chairs, 2 recruitment chairs, 2 freshman peer advisors, which essentially just help out the freshmen with figuring out where everything is and what everything is, and helping out the new freshmen as well get acquainted when they come in the fall, and that's really important, and kind of help with deadlines in the summer, that kind of thing. And we also have somebody who helps out with the website, and so that's it.
Cool. Very good. And I guess the question we got that I think is a really good one is, have you guys, now you guys are all mostly captains and commodores, and so hopefully it wasn't you, but have you had scenarios where you found a captain or a leader falling short of their duties, and how did you tackle that? It's tough, and this is a really tricky situation to navigate. Anybody have any experience? Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I was gonna say on our team, we've had this happen not that many times, but a couple of times. And I think that's where the value of our president role has really come in, because that person's more of like an administration person, and they're able to like follow up with each officer and make sure they're doing their job and they're hitting the deadlines and like working with them in case there's something coming up and they're not able to get their job done. Then there's sort of like almost a safety net. And that's kind of what that position is, more of like administration. So things like can't fall through the cracks.
Roger that. Yeah, so it's a little bit of a support team saying, okay, somebody's under the weather, we're gonna step up and make sure we pull the slack out. Yeah, great.
Just help out where needed.
Roger. And then long term, have people had leaders step down from positions, anything like that over time? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so we've had one of our practice captains step down this past year, and it was a interesting experience. Just trying to, because our captains choose our executive board, and our captains are elected by our entire team, and then after they're elected, people that want to be on our board submit applications, and the captains make the final call. So
wow, that's cool. That's a really interesting way to do it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting experience, and making sure that when that person steps down, they understand why, like what went wrong. If it was most of the time, it's just like, I have too much going on, I can't handle this, and this isn't best for the team right now. And another one of our board members was able to step up and fill that position, which was super, super helpful. But making sure that as a captain is also like a friend on the team, that we still have a good relationship despite them not being on our team anymore.
Roger that. Yeah, and I think so. This question was from Rain Duff, who I think is a high school student. And I think a key here, something that I've seen over the years, is leadership can be a little bit like, at times it can look like a popularity contest, right? Where people just like have always aspired to be leaders of organizations, but they don't necessarily know what it takes to be there. And I think I've seen over time that the better you enumerate those duties and make sure people know what the job is before they sign up to do it, the better leaders you get in those positions, and the better you weed out the people that aren't really capable of doing it, which is why I really like the application system that Olivia described. And I know, querying other coaches around the Dartmouth athletic department, that is something where people actually apply to be captains on some of our teams, and they go through like a job interview almost with the coaches. And then on those teams, the coaches select the captain. So it's definitely different every team. But I think, I know at Dartmouth, that was one of our big adjustments, was we made sure that, being a leader on the team isn't just complaining to the coaches on behalf of the team. It's really about forming a partnership with the team and with the coaches and making sure that everybody's not stepping with the same pace when we go to try to get better. And I think that's a tricky thing. We had another question here. How do you balance, this is from another high school student, Javier Garcon, how do you balance strong team chemistry and making sure that, it's fun at practice with efficiency and better, and making sure practice is good? How do we do that?
I think I can start with that if that's okay.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it, Maya.
I think that strong culture on the team just starts with people on the team supporting each other. I remember that was one of my big surprises, just even freshman year, is I wasn't that good as a skipper. I'd just been crewing most of my time in 49ers and stuff, and I didn't really know how to drive very well. But people on the team would tell me how to do things, and they would see me sailing, and they'd be like, "Oh, you need to sit further forward," or "Oh, I saw you can't tack like that." And like, they would help you, coach you as well as the coaches, which makes you want to help them. So when you get better and you go up the ranks, and that makes you want to contribute more, and you want to help the new people who don't necessarily know that well how to sail, and you want to sail with crews that need more help. And I think that's a very good way to like start that whole process of being competitive while at the same time having a good team dynamic. Roger,
great stuff. And then what about anybody else? Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because you don't want, you don't want too much fun to get in the way of being productive. And the way we handle that on our team is, well, it hasn't ever really been a big problem on our team, maybe just specifically, but the biggest thing for us is just be where your feet are, right? Like, why are you at practice? We're at practice, to get better, to push each other, to push yourselves, right? And so I think that's a big thing. And also just like focusing on what is now. It's so easy to take all of school with you into the boat, but there's literally nothing you can do about it in the boat. And so that's one of the beautiful things about sailing. But just be where your feet are.
Yeah, Roger that. And I think so much of it comes down to tone, right? Like, if people are lighthearted on the water, you can still sail really hard while like making jokes to each other and knowing that efficiency is a priority. I think a lot of that comes down to the students taking that onto themselves. Any other thoughts on this topic? Really good question. Cool, we got another good one. How do you balance a team with a wide range of skill levels, from Allison Keenan? And I know we've got some groups out here that face that. So anybody want to take that on?
Yeah, CalPoly. I mean, I've always been really proud of our team for being very diverse. And I think that starts with the fact that we actually don't do any cuts. So we will get new people on the team who have very minimal or no sailing experience at all. And oftentimes in the beginning of the season, we will pair them up with medium experienced or even sometimes our most experienced sailors, so that they kind of start to get a grip on what sailing is. And then I can think of multiple times where people who put in a lot of hard work and are practicing a lot end up being crews on our varsity team. And then we also will later in the season start to have more varsity distinguished practice versus like JV learning practices.
Roger that. So sometimes like a balance of segregating those two groups and bringing them together depending on what the mission for the day is, basically. Good. And then who else? Any other thoughts on that? It sounds like I really love Allison's idea of YouTubes in advance, so you don't have to take one group and go through some of the basics. If they can get some of that under their belt without devoting other team member time, that sounds like a really smart way to get a leg up. So
yeah, absolutely. And the benefit to videos is that they can pause it, they can think about it, they can write it down in their journal. If they forget it, they can go back and watch it. So immediately when we have new people join who don't know anything, we say, here are your 6 videos. Go get a solid base understanding. I mean, that's not everything. You have to put time on the water to make things connect mentally, but it's a really good starting place, and it's been a very helpful resource for us.
For sure. And I think it's worth mentioning for everyone out there that there's really only a handful of teams in the country that don't accept people at that sailing level. And we're talking like probably 5 or less teams in the country that are really like, everyone has been doing a lot of competitive sailing before college. Most teams, including mine, take on people who either sailed one summer when they were 8 years old or sailed, a little bit growing up or have never been in a boat before. So I think that's common, and good strategies for raising them is important. We're going to do 2 more questions here and then we're going to call it quits. So I want to go to, this is a really good question. Student dues and what that looks like out-of-pocket expenses. So let's go quick around the horn. Do you pay dues? We don't have to say exactly how much it is, but let's say we pay dues once a year, once per term or semester. And then in addition to that, do we pay out-of-pocket expenses on the road? So let's start with Olivia.
So we pay dues once a semester, as well as we have to pay dues to our sailing club that we sail out of as part of the university. We also pay out-of-pocket costs for travel, and we pay a base $25 fee for any regattas where we go more than like 100 miles away.
Roger that. How about Allison Crowley?
Yeah, for CalPoly, we have you can either pay per quarter or once for the whole year, and you get like a little discount if you pay for the whole year. And that covers everything except for food for traveling. So it includes like gas money, airfare, whatever. So yeah.
Cool, that's super helpful. How about Allison Chenard?
We pay dues at the beginning of the year, and then there's a slightly reduced rate if you join in the spring. And that covers the travel if you are on the roster competing in the regatta. We also have a cheerleading squad that we sometimes bring, is what we call them. And those folks just come along for the regatta experience, especially to Eckerd, to sit in the sun and see some dolphins. And those people have to pay their way for travel and lodging, so they pay whatever split. But if you are on the roster, your travel expenses are paid for, minus food.
Great, good stuff. And then Maya, how about you?
Yeah, we pay a small amount once a year, but that's required by all club sports from the club sports department. So, and then we pay for food on the weekends when we travel and stuff like that. But travel expenses are covered, and hotels and everything like that is covered. Roger
that. And then how about you guys, Isaac?
Same as BU there. They pay food and traveling and small dues once a year.
Roger that. And I know when I was at UVM, we always had good tricks. Like if you hadn't paid your dues yet for the year, you pump the gas and stuff like that, which can be really helpful. So good question. And then I guess one more thing. I actually think we're going to wrap up. So Allison Chenard, I know you had something you wanted to add.
Yeah. So I've seen all these wonderful questions coming in, and for those people watching, we've had the little Zoom chat going, and some people have wanted to answer your questions, but we're trying to keep this moving. So just wanted to let you guys know that I'm going to do an Instagram story on college sailing, and I'm going to invite our panelists to do some typed responses for some of those questions that we couldn't get to. So go check our Instagram story in the next 24 hours, take some screenshots. And the panelists, I mean, I'm speaking for myself here, but I'm an open door, open book. You're welcome to DM any of our teams with questions. And I'm here to help, and I'm sure the rest of the panelists are too. So thank you, guys.
Yes, and you know, I want to do a big thank you to our panelists today. Obviously, everybody's taking a lot of time out of their day in the quarantine reality to be a part of this. And I want to especially thank Allison Chenard. She helped put together the phenomenal slide deck, and Isaac and Olivia contributed a bunch with the content for that. And just having so many great perspectives from every walk of college sailing is super valuable. And I want to echo what Allison said. We all are on this panel because we want to be able to help every team grow in the ICSA. And so if your team's out there and you have a specific question you want to touch on, or you have some other concerns or something triggered an idea in your head that you want to ask us about, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We're happy to be part of the development for everybody. So I think that's all we have. Brittany, do we turn it back over to you?
Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and a big thank you to Justin, Allison, Olivia, Grace, Maya, and Isaac. I know that this is a lot of info that I wish I would have had in a leadership position on college sailing. So I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to circle up together and learn a lot while we have maybe some forced time indoors. So thanks again, everybody. And starting in 2 weeks, the ICSA is going to be back on the Starboard Portal every Thursday at 4 p.m. to continue these developing team symposiums. So be sure to tune in for that. And if you enjoyed today's session, please support our efforts to build a community of active and engaged sailors through the Starboard Portal. You can do that purchasing or renewing a US Sailing membership. We have a ton of great content coming up on the schedule, including more of these developing symposiums. And thanks to US Sailing members, like a lot of our viewers, we're able to adapt and evolve better to better serve sailors with more content like this. And you can do that at mem.ussailing.org. And thanks again, everybody, and have a fantastic evening.